welcome back to my atelier. I hope everyone is doing great today. I certainly am. I wanted to do a review of a set of watercolors that I bought recently. These are the Holbein Artist Watercolors, and I've seen them circle around online quite a bit. And I managed to get my hands on them because they went on sale recently, which is awesome, and I'm very excited about them. I'm, in general, quite a big fan of the Holbein brand. I think they make really good quality acrylic gouache and also normal gouache. So I was quite happy to get my hands on the watercolor too, because I would not say I'm a watercolor artist, but it is like my preferred medium, watercolor and colored pencil, so I really wanted to try these out. I made a custom swatch sheet, and as usual when I do swatches over ink, I use the Sakura Micron pens just because once they're dry they don't really bleed with watercolor and they can take quite a beating. So just in case that helps anyone. Spec wise, those are 12 colors and they are liquid watercolors. They come with 5 milliliters each. There is both a black and a white color, which depending how you feel on that might be good or a bad thing. Or for me personally, I don't really like white in my watercolor palette, but I tried using it throughout this process and I actually quite like it, and I'll explain why a bit later. My first impressions are that they are very pigmented, which is great to see. I still kind of want to try them out once they're dry, because the way I usually use liquid watercolor is that I put them in half pans. And the thing with watercolors is that a little goes a really long way, especially once they're dry. So, some people might be a little bit hesitant when they see 5 milliliter tubes, but as someone who owns the large 15 milliliter tubes of different brands, you don't need that. You don't need that unless it's a color that you use every single day. For me, for example, I use burnt sienna quite a lot. That's the only tube that you will ever need 15 milliliters of. So yeah, spare yourself the panic. It's 5 milliliters is great, goes a really long way. You can see I put a little bit on the plastic on the left, and I'm still using it today even after this painting. I'm just using it in my sketchbook because it lasts quite a while. I'm doing a little painting here to kind of test out how these watercolors work when actually applied to something that I would draw. The paper wise, it's 300 GSM, very low cotton, it's not super high quality paper, but I had it lying around and it's quite textured because I like the texture, and I'm drawing my OC beetle. Color wise, they are very pigmented. Don't get me wrong, the pigment is great. However, I have a bit of opinions about the color selections, and that is that while the colors are gorgeous, I find that the blues and the browns are a bit too close in hue. There's a warm toned and a more cool toned darker blue, and a warm tone and a more cool dark toned brown. But at first I was maybe I went in with the same color again, but I swatched them later on, which you're gonna see towards the end. And I think that's just a personal preference, but I think they should have gone with something else. You can definitely use both colors. You don't need 2 blues in your watercolor palette in general. It's more of kind of a shortcut, or depending on how you work. But I feel if you're gonna offer a 12 set, it's good to have a bit more variety, especially in the blues. I think the browns were all right, because I feel with brown there's a lot of nuance, especially when you're mixing skin tones or clothes. I draw a lot of leather, so there's definitely more to be done with that. But that's my only kind of thought about the color selection. Just pigment wise, they're super vivid, they dry down really nicely, and for the price it's definitely one of the more pigment wise one of the more high quality watercolors that I've used. While I was painting, I tried to layer them all on top of each other and also kind of lift color off. So the way lifting watercolor works is you wait for it to dry down, and then you go in with just a wet brush, and then you can kind of lift the pigment back up, and you can get little highlights by achieving that. So that is possible with these colors, which is great. And they've overall not really given me any trouble, which is nice. I appreciate that. Layer wise, yeah, you can see me lifting them right here. Layer-wise, they layer really nicely on top of each other, and they also blend into each other really nice. They don't granulate, which they're not granulating colors, so obviously don't, but like the pigment doesn't separate. The pigment is very consistent throughout, which is a good thing. But the colors do vary in like transparency, and that's actually where the white came in. So if you don't know, white pigment is usually a lot more opaque, meaning it like covers better than like a transparent pigment. And the way I use the white in this palette is by making the colors a bit more opaque, which now that like in hindsight, when I think about that makes so much sense. But at that time I wasn't really thinking about it. So if you have a watercolor palette with white, then consider using that to make your colors more opaque. They are obviously going to be a little bit lighter, but you can always just mix in a bit more of a darker color or color on the opposing side of the spectrum, and it'll like dull it down a little bit. And you can blend them really nicely. I've had a bit of trouble with a few watercolor brands in the past where if you mix them together, the pigment kind of separates from each other, or it won't mix properly, or it'll dry down awkwardly. This is not really a problem with these. I've had to like absolutely problem-free run with these, which is good. And you'll kind of see how they layer with other mediums a little bit later on. Okay, a little bit before I continue this review, I wanted to talk about what I'm painting. So this is me painting my OC Beetle on an A6 postcard. Beetle is one of my oldest OCs that I'm still actively drawing. I think I made her when I was like 13 or 14, and I still really like her. I really want to update her design. So she's a warrior princess from like a bug colony. There's like a species in my world where they're like bug inspired. And I've seen a video of how like beetles fight with their, I don't know, are they antlers or something? With their grabby things on top of their heads. So that's kind of how Beetle came to be. Initially she was just like a character design exercise, but then she kind of grew into more. Her skirt has like wings and stuff, so it's kind of like, you know, when like beetles open their shell and then like their wings are under that. I don't know if this is making sense, but you know, get creative. Maybe your design of Beetle is completely different than from mine. So yeah, the joys of imagination. Yeah, so I have this kind of idea of her kind of looking out the window and one of her friends kind of asking her to maybe come spar, or like, you know, when you're like a child and your friend is asking you like, hey, come on outside. It's kind of capturing that same kind of feeling of, you know, excitement or like going on an adventure. I wanted to make the focus on her, which is why I didn't put a lot of detail in the background. I also just didn't have the time. But yeah, that's Beetle. I really want to redesign her and like the, you know, people from her story, because I feel like it's been a few years. What's funny about this is actually that Beetle, the story about Beetle and her friends was supposed to be like my quote-unquote main project, and then I started my project that's like about witch school and magic school, which is now the main project. So like the side project became the main project, and I'm not even sure if I still want to do this, to be honest. But I still really like the characters. They are all in severe need of a redesign, but yeah, they're still very close to my heart. I still really like them, and I should really draw them more. I really miss drawing them. Like while I was drawing this, I was like, this is the first time I've drawn her in a few years, and how I came to it was because I have a little drawing of her hanging on my wall right next to where I film. So I was like, damn, I should really draw Beetle. So now I want to draw her whole group. You know, maybe I'll do a video of like redesigns and talk a bit about their stories, but I do not know if people would be interested in that, because that would be like 10 minutes of lore dump that is very incoherent. But yeah, let me know if you're interested in that, I guess. Okay, so now for the large question on, are they worth it? In my opinion, yes, and I'm gonna break it down a little bit more. So I've checked online just now how much they cost, and the general price range that I'm finding is between, this is in US dollars, 25 to 30 US dollars for the 5 milliliter tubes for like a set of 12, so like the same set that I bought. The set of 12 with the 15 milliliters is like, I think double. It's like around, I saw one for like 50 pounds, but as previously stated, unless there's one color that you use like really, really, really much, you're not gonna need 50 milliliters. Like 5 milliliters is plenty. I have watercolors with like 5 milliliters from like years back that I still use to this day, so I think it's worth it. If you can get it on sale, even better. This is the price of maybe like 3 tubes of Dollar Raleigh, so go for it. It's really good. I do have to say, if you are like a beginner at watercolor, like it's a good set to start off. I always say start with like solid like half pans and not liquid ones, just because liquid ones tend to react a little bit differently when they're wet versus when they're dry. But at the same time, half pans tend to also be a bit more expensive, like per like milliliter or like per gram. So if you have the money lying around and you really want to get it like an introductory set that is really good, for all means, go for it. You can also get like one of those empty watercolor palettes and just squeeze them in there and then let them dry, and it's the same thing. Just if you work with browns or blues like a lot, maybe consider getting an additional color to replace in your palette, but it's really not that big of an issue. I think it's more of like a personal peeve with me. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, you can get, if you want to, I use so the white in this palette isn't opaque enough to use it as like a gouache highlight. You're gonna see me in like a second highlight everything with some gouache. So you can get literally like any color of gouache or like any brand of gouache in white, and then squeeze that into your palette and let it dry, and then you can still re-wet it and use it as a highlight, just in case you were planning on using the white in the palette to use as a highlight. But overall, the pigments are great. I really like them. I'm actually quite impressed because, art supplies can be really expensive. If you're interested in getting them, I bought them at a Blick when I was in the US, and I know Blick has them. Then I know Jackson's has Holbein too, and I think I saw them. And you can check Amazon, but Amazon's always a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to art supplies. But yeah, my main recommendation is check your local art store, because shopping local is always the best option. Support your local art stores. Anyways, that's it from me today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you like it. I hope this was helpful. And yeah, let me know if you've tried them. Let me know your opinions. If you have any comments, I would love to hear them. If you want a video of me lore dumping about my OCs for 10 minutes, let me know that. And I hope you have an awesome day.